All right, welcome back to the Blue Ox Running Podcast. We are on number 19, and it is just Alicia and I sitting here in the store. We do not have a guest today, but we are going to get into kind of recapping our spring. We had a huge spring. We both had a big birthday, and we both did kind of a cool, bigger and better event from that. So we're going to get into that. We've had some questions about what the heck we even did when we were out of town. And then, as you all know, life is crazy. It's the middle of summer, and we're going to talk through just kind of our rhythms of life as the seasons go by and how life is going very fast, but how that kind of relates to aging and running and training differently in our 40s as opposed to 30s. Before we get into all of that, Alicia, what is your word of the day? What's top of mind for you, my darling?
We will go with dirt.
Dirt. Whoa. Did you know that my name literally translates into dirt? Adam. God made Adam out of the earth. Dirt. Okay. Here's the theme song.
What's your spring running goal?
Qualify for the Boston Marathon.
Claim the beer mile title.
Training for a triathlon.
20 minutes again under a 5K.
To run happy.
Balance running and family.
Finish Grandma's marathon.
To not die.
Fast.
Or slow.
Let's go! Fast or slow! Let's go! Fast or slow! Let's go!
All right, we are coming back from that theme song. We are excited to get into episode number 19 here. And Alicia, I think I know where you're going with dirt, but I'm sorry I already derailed us. It is not about me. What is dirt? Your word of the day. What does that mean?
Dances with dirt.
Dances with dirt. Yes. What did we do this last weekend?
We camped out at Devil's Lake, and Adam kind of hopped in to the half. He originally was going to do the 50, and we saw lots of people from the herd, which was super fun. Some of them even came and visited our campsite.
Yeah, super fun. So way back when, 10 years ago, I was kind of itching to do something different with my running, and I was getting sick of the roads. And I wanted to do longer stuff. So 10 years ago is when I kind of started to do longer ultras and on the trails. And my first 50 mile was Dances with Dirt at Devil's Lake. And it's kind of crazy to think about. That's the year I turned 30. And we camped in some other random spot because it was so hard to get a camping site in Devil's Lake. And I found myself like running through the campgrounds as part of the race. And the course was actually a little different back then, but this is part of the course still now is you go through the campsites. And I was like, oh man, that'd be awesome to be able to wake up in your own campsite and kind of be on the course and experience a race that way where you're kind of immersed in the course. And so 10 years later, we kind of made our way back there. Our kids are older. We are older. And I was going to do the 50 mile again, but my training wasn't where it needed to be. I needed to take some time off. I was a little nervous about that distance with where my body's at right now. And so I bumped it down to the half marathon. And even then, I didn't even think I was going to do it coming into this month. And anyway, kind of last minute decision, I did do it. And the kids and Alicia got to sleep in, wake up in their own campsite, and kind of see the race go by there and then head to the finish line. So it was a little bit of the same and a little bit of a different experience. But how different was it for you this year compared to 10 years ago? It was it was quite different, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I wanted to share, we camped with another family that
Yes.
are not a runner family. They are way more into biking, and we knew them when our kids were babies, and their oldest is like the same age as Shane, and he was like so into the spectating, and it was so fun to see him so into it, like giving you, like picking up your water bottle and like watching all the runners and figuring out who's in first, who's in second.
Yeah.
He was super into it, so that was so fun. But back to your question, I mean, when we camped last time, Leo was
0.
Yeah, like, I mean, I'm like nursing a baby in a tent, and it was, just to be really honest, like not fun.
Yeah, it was super hard. And I mean, that's what we're going to kind of get into on this episode is some of the milestones and markers you have on not just your running career, but your life, right? Like what year? I'll always remember 1992. I was 9 years old. That's such a marker for how old I was 4th grade because our family moved from Colorado back to Wisconsin. But then there's these other markers in life. 2017, we opened the store here. 2013 is when I went a little further into the ultra running world, and I turned 30. Now we're 10 years later. Alicia and I both turned 40 this year. And we're still kind of floating around doing some of these events and training for them and having fun, but there's a lot that's different as well. And I think that's hopefully really relatable to folks out there that have been in the running world for a long time. Maybe you ran cross country and track in your younger years. Maybe you didn't. But things are constantly like kind of changing with expectations, and none of us are professional athletes. So we just don't, the only reason that we would get out there is kind of for our own goals and our own reasons. And so it was kind of cool to go back to that same race and have a little bit of a deja vu. But now we have 3 kids instead of 2, and none of them are breastfeeding. And I was so content with kind of bumping down and actually just kind of hopping in and jumping into the half marathon and giving it a go, and really not really caring about the result. And I really only kind of pushed hard in the last half and tried to feel good for the first half. Just a lot less pressure than what I used to put on myself to
we
nail
went
it.
on an 8-mile hike or something.
We hiked for 4 hours the day before. And typically, I even told my friend this as we were hiking with them. I was like, if I was getting ready for a 50-mile or a race that I really kind of cared about, I would be really nervous about like, okay, how long is this hike going to be? Like, am I in the sun too much? Like, how do my legs feel now? Well, how do they feel now? Like, did I get enough calories? And I literally kind of like spent the weekend as if I wasn't going to run the race because I still didn't think I was. And it was just really liberating to be able to be dad and be catch up with friends that we haven't seen for a while and stay up late and eat a bunch of greasy tacos that I probably would be nervous about if my stomach didn't have the right thing for an important race the next morning. And
that chicken and wild rice soup that you're used to eating.
I used to do my first marathon ever, I did chicken and wild rice soup the night before, and I ran really well. And so ever since then, I'm like, I have to have this before an event. Like, that is my meal. And I think I've run terrible on that meal, and I've run good on it, so it doesn't even matter. But yeah, this weekend was camping. It was getting not enough sleep. It was just being a little bit more laid back. I'm learning to relax those expectations, live life a little bit less high-strung, so to speak.
I thought it was so fun, too, because that was a really hard vacation for me with the kids. Like, I remember being like, I am never going camping with babies again.
You talking about 10 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, like, there's moments in there that, like, I specifically remember, like, Leo was wearing these, like, snowman jammies because it was cold. But my point is, like, I told them about those things. Like, I was like, you guys were right here. Leo, I was holding you. Shane, you were like bumbling around on this gate because there's like a gate at one of the spots we went to. And even though that was so hard, it was so fun to bring them into those memories. And they were super interested in hearing those stories too.
Thanks for listening to the Blue Ox Running Podcast. Did you know that we have a mobile app? Of course you did. Or maybe you didn't. Either way, you should absolutely go to your mobile device's app store, search for Blue Ox Running, download the app, and sign in. It's the only app that helps you shop online with us, see our group running routes, check into our events, manage how many loyalty points you've earned towards your next gift card, and get our latest updates and podcasts. You'll even have access to checking into virtual-only events through the QR code reader to earn more points and discounts. Use the same email you've used in the store to sync all your points together or sign up for a new account and get saving today. Don't know where to start? Simply go to blueox.run/save. blueox.run/save will get you to the right place for the Blue Ox Running mobile app. Yeah, and even before that, I remember Alicia, you kind of getting back into the marathon game this last year, and we'll get into that here. We're going to talk about Boston. Alicia ran Boston this year in April. I did a different event in April as well. So thinking back to those really early years, I mean, when you had Shane, which is our first baby, I remember you breastfeeding after your warm-up before you're going to switch out your shoes to do your half marathon.
Yeah, I got back
in
into
Virginia.
it pretty quick because, I mean, so other story, but I was pretty adamant that like I still want to run competitively, even with kids. Like I want to do that. And I did. I ran a half. Shane was 5 months old, like where I felt fit and got right back. I was like 1 minute off my PR or something. So I did that, but quickly realized I couldn't maintain that the more kids we had.
Yeah. And for those of you that don't know, like I've had a big injury in the last year. So even just getting back to it, I mean, this was the first time I entered a race and put a bib on in almost 2 years. I ran the Eau Claire Marathon the year that they had it in the fall, which was 2021, because we're still dealing with some COVID weirdness with events and being gathered. So September of 2001, I ran that marathon and had a really hard time recovering with some injury that I was already kind of getting into. And it's been a really long, slow build back to even just running, 4 times a week. I only run 4 times a week right now. I bike once or twice a week on top of that. And so this was just a really good, like, first step back into, oh yeah, like, I got these pre-race vibes. I'm kind of like seeing how I feel. I'm shoulder to shoulder with these other competitors and kind of sitting in a pack and figuring out if they feel good, if I feel good. Like all that kind of just it's almost like riding a bike. It all kind of came flooding back with how fun the sport can actually be. Not just like, am I hitting my times today? That's the reason I'm really glad I ran the half, to be honest, is some of these ultra runs are super fun, super enjoyable. I still can see myself doing something like a 50-mile run later in life, but the half marathon, I was shoulder to shoulder running with other people competing. It felt like a race rather than like just my thing that I'm out there kind of alone. Sometimes those long ones get pretty lonely.
Anyone, not that you would say that, but it was just so funny because he crossed the finish line and our 13-year-old was like, I'm just so glad Dad won that one, for his confidence with being injured. And he's like reflecting. He's like, that's probably got to feel real good for him.
Yeah. Like the whole family has probably felt my stress and change this last year. It's been a wild ride, and I can laugh about it now, but there were some 1 year ago right now, I think I was still walking. So that's kind of crazy to see and get perspective. And part of us bringing it up on this podcast is to hopefully give a little perspective, because I feel like I've needed perspective and I have a little bit more than I did a year ago. And anyway, let's get into what you were doing in the spring. Speaking of being super lonely on a trail and wanting to go long and not having competition, like that's kind of what I actually did in April. But you were running amongst, tens of thousands of people. Alicia, tell us a little bit about what the heck you were doing in April of this year.
Yeah, I trained for Boston. I qualified at Whistle Stop, and then I also ran a little bit quicker, and then I qualified again at Twin Cities.
Of last year.
Yep. And then I went into running Boston in I'm like, was the year 2023? Yes.
Yeah, this is 2023. So we've probably said it already, but we both turned 40 this year. It's not like we needed to make this huge statement or like this big event out of it, but it just so happened to be kind of a peculiar year where Alicia qualified for Boston, and we went out and watched her run. The whole family went out and watched her run.
Well, and that was somewhat intentional. Like I have never run marathons before, and so I started training kind of in COVID with the plans to do, we've talked about this before, grandmas, and then it got canceled. But I was kind of prepping for like, I want to run a marathon when I turn 40. Great. If it's Boston, I think I can qualify. But like, that was kind of the intent. Okay, I'm turning 40. Let's like train for a marathon and see what happens. 'Cause I've always done some shorter stuff.
Yeah. And this was your first spring marathon. You ran 2 previous in the fall, Whistle Stop in Twin Cities. How did you like training through the winter?
Well, if you guys know me, I like that winter running.
She does. She likes winter running.
And
like people are out there
like,
that's true for.
Yeah, for like actually being through the race and like doing a couple marathons and somewhere in the fall. For me, it's like not even about the race, right? I think Dr. Moo or Matt Evans talks about it's like the process and like the getting out there every day with a friend and the memories you're making along the way than just the race itself. So like, I have some really fun memories with my friend I train with that like we couldn't do a long run because we're running in like snow up to our knees and we're just like, we got to call it. Like we've been out here for 2 hours and we've run like 7 miles or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like we're like, it's not, we've been on our feet long enough and adjusting. And like I said, just it's like therapy almost, you know what I mean? The process of it, of hanging out with someone. And then like you get to the race and it's super special. But for me, it's like the build up to it.
It's the process. Yeah. I mean, that helps with how much pressure you do or don't put on yourself for the actual race day. Because if it's all about the race, if like 99% of what you're trying to get out of this build up is just race day, and you get a humid day or a windy day, or you just aren't feeling it that day, or you get a stomach virus or whatever, like, then it just feels like that whole last, 5 months is down the tubes, where that hopefully shouldn't be the case. And
I go into race day being like, regardless of how I do, I give it my best.
Yes.
I give it my best that day. And, if my best that day is like, I do get an upset stomach, or I still want to, I'm really big on like, let's push through the pain and push ourselves a bit. But, if that pushing is as much as I got and it's 10 minutes slower than my PR, then I'm okay with that because I know I gave it my all for that day.
So my perspective on Boston was like, I was super excited because this is so like Alicia doing a big city marathon, traveling, having the whole family come out. This is like so antithetical to how she typically operates because she's pretty low key. She doesn't really care about racing. She's just not, she has not been the spotlighted, like, star athlete in our family that we all celebrate on these big time events. She's a phenomenal athlete, like probably better than any of us on raw talent. And if she wanted to go crush it, she could crush it more than she does, but she's just more laid back. And she just has not taken the approach of like getting every single ounce of every single PR out of herself. And it's something I really admire, to be honest, because she's very open-handed and very sure of herself with her running. So this was an opportunity for us to kind of flip the tables. That's probably the wrong use of flip the tables. Flip the script. Trade the tables. What am I trying to say, Alex? Flip the script. Trade places. This is where like we kind of traded roles a little bit, where the family traveled, got to see mom rock and roll at a big time event, where she's usually kind of anti fanfare, anti big event. She doesn't like to be in the spotlight. Even this podcast, she's not a big spotlight kind of person. So for me to see that was amazing. And all the kids loved it. We had a whole day of travel just on the race day itself to take the commuter train and see her at mile 6. Just to experience the Boston Marathon the way that I experienced it for the very first time was like probably one of the coolest days of running in my life. And I was not racing because I always figured, hey, one day I'll go run the Boston Marathon and it'll be great and everyone talks about it. But like to be there for someone else, especially our kids seeing their master's mom out there, was super special. Master's mom. I mean, how was it for you? How did the race actually go? Some people like Alicia doesn't like to talk about her racing. I've had to coach her. I'd be like, so people are going to ask, you need to be able to speak about your race because people genuinely just want to know. How did your race go, Alicia? Tell us.
I was pretty anxious, but that's the reality of it, right? There was like a lot of, we stayed really far out, which we wanted to do to save some money because we're going with our whole family.
Anxious and frugal. This is our family.
Yes. And this is Alicia in a nutshell.
Anxious and frugal.
So I actually had to get anywhere, we had to take a bus to public transportation. But I went with my great friend, Shauna, and her family happened to rent a vehicle. So they picked me up in the morning and we actually drove to the start, which is like not very common. Usually you get on public transportation or walk to the buses and then the buses. And so like it took us way longer than we thought to get down there. And so like I got to Athletic Village and like literally just had to go straight to the start. Like I barely had time to go to the bathroom. And so for me, like I'm someone that always comes early to things. Like I sit and prep, but looking back, it was probably for the best because I just sit there and get nervous anyways. And like Adam said, I am pretty laid back about my racing, but I can't turn off those nerves is what I'm like before race day. And like I said, I genuinely don't care. Like, I put in the work. I'm not like set on I need to run this time, but I get pretty nervous before racing still, hence why I don't race a lot and have taken a break from it because that was a big part of like collegiate running and like the pressure I put on myself. So I felt that all again, and it like wasn't a good feeling, and you're there alone. That was really hard for me of just like, cause Shauna was in a totally different corral. And so I just like standing there by myself and I'm like, okay, it's time to go. And we went and it was, I don't know, I'm getting emotional.
I know.
It was just like awesome. There's people all around you and it was a great experience. But at the same time, like that's what I mainly wanted to share is like, there's all these people, but at the same time, it did feel like, which I don't know if other people feel this way, like it felt really like lonely because I don't know any of those people. And even like seeing you guys, I saw you at 6 and then not till the finish. And like at Twin Cities, I saw you guys so many times. And so like, part of me, like, I don't think I gave up, but there was just so much time in the 6 miles to the end, and Boston's hard at the end. That's where it gets pretty hilly. And like I said, I didn't give up, but there was a sense of just being like, this is so awesome. There's so many people around me. So I don't want to like downplay that. And like high-fiving and like, but there was like this sense of like, well, who am I high-fiving? Like, I want to see my people. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about a smaller race, even though like Boston was amazing. Like the finish line was just like spectacular.
And we saw you, which is crazy.
Right. I like heard Adam
We were on the other side of the street at the Boston Marathon where there's just like tens of thousands of people screaming. And like, I mustered up all my vocal cords and Alicia could hear us and came across. Like that was probably the proudest that we were, is to see you finish, but also have us connect and like have us see you and you see us right before the finish.
Right. And that's what I can see why people chase the big races. And I'm not downplaying that. Like, that's awesome. Like, I just think for someone that is a little bit more like, I don't want to say even reserved, but like to explain the finish was like almost being like famous. You have like all these people and there's like a high to that. And I fully embraced it too. I'm like, I am here. I'm going to like take this in. But at the end of the day, like there's more to me than that. Yeah. And so like, I get if like you put everything into your running and, that's kind of it. Like I would want to chase that again, but I think I had the perspective of like, there's more to life than just running and chasing goals. And like, it was amazing. But at the end of the day, I like wobble back up the stairs and like, we'll probably post some stuff. Like my hair was like a rat's nest.
Oh yeah.
Because it rained and like, you see the rawness of just like your feet beat up and I got to see my friend come back and like experience that too with her family. So there's so many special moments in there.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I want to say is just kind of a heads up. We are going to be releasing a video that's a little bit more of kind of like a documentary style, kind of a longer video when it comes to how things transpired this spring for us, because we just kind of felt like this is a big deal. We're moving into a different part of life. Kids are getting older. We're getting older. Came up on 2 big events here. And so when I look back at those videos, my point is my favorite parts isn't necessarily like the quintessential big Boston, big finish line moments. Like everyone has those and everyone can kind of relate to like feeling how you feel in a race, but it's like the before and the after, like hobbling back to your Airbnb, like realizing once we got there that our Airbnb is up 3 flights of stairs and like kind of making a joke the whole weekend that like mom's going to have to come up these after her race and she's going to have to go down the next morning, and having the kids help you and laughing about it.
My darn frugalness.
Yeah. like getting on the bus, right? And like the next day was a family day. Like we legitimately toured Boston a little bit. We found a trampoline park for the kids because they're going crazy, you know. They're not going crazy, but like they need an outlet that's appropriate for them as well. So not having it just be this Alicia vacation, but having it highlight her and everything that she did, and then also kind of have this flavor for each of us that was kind of like we're walking through this experience as a team. That's what I really liked about it.
Yeah, and I don't want to downplay. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's part of me that's like, holy crap, like I'm running on the same course Kipchoge is running.
Oh, yeah.
And like Sarah Hall is one of my favorite runners. Like there are so many people there. Desi, like I was just like, wow. Like even when I was running, I'm like, they just ran on this like how many minutes before? And the few minutes I had in Athletic Village, they have this huge Jumbotron.
Yeah.
And they're like showing Kipchoge because he's like literally almost finishing. And
yeah, he's like,
and he didn't have the greatest race either. I mean, it's all relative, right? But like, so not just Kipchoge, but they're showing all the lead runners. And so like you're watching that, like going in and being like, oh my gosh, is it like, cause everyone was talking about if he was going to get a new world record.
Yeah. You're basically the Kipchoge of like 40-year-old moms, you know,
totally.
Like didn't quite PR, still ran good, didn't feel the greatest, and then hobbled around the next day. It's all relatable. You're all going through the same experience.
I'm basically Kipchoge.
You're basically Kipchoge. So anyway, there's not too many words that we can keep saying to even us recounting it now. I haven't gone there in my head, and I could really get choked up thinking about everything that was, because like you come back from a trip like that and back to the grind, like back to work, back to kids, back to school, and like we've really kind of wanted to slow down a little bit, talk about it. And
this is like the first time I'm reflecting on it.
Yeah, like Alicia and I before podcast. If you guys don't know us too well, like my process is, hey, like when are the mics going to be on? Let's talk about things. And then like anyway, I'm a little bit more spontaneous and like don't prepare like where our conversation is going as much. And Alicia is a little bit more prepared, like in a good way, where we want to have some markers here with what we want to talk about. But even with those markers, it is crazy how I haven't thought about that weekend in a long time. Mm-hmm. And even the week before that, like 8 days before the Boston Marathon, where we're at like the biggest sporting event in distance running in America. It's like the Super Bowl of marathons. That like it's crazy. You got Athletic Village. You got the pre-race stuff on Boylston. It was really cool to take in. We're flying there. We got the kids. It's just this big thing. 8 days before that, I was celebrating my 40th birthday on the day itself in the Grand Canyon, like all by myself the whole day. Hey everybody, this is Adam with Blue Ox Running. Thank you for listening to the podcast. This is only a 20-second interruption. Reminding you, shop.blueoxrunning.com is our online store. We do prefer you come down to our store, downtown Eau Claire, especially for new fittings with footwear, apparel, and gear. But if you can't make it in, or you know what you need, we have your size online. Check it out, shop.blueoxrunning.com. We have all of our in-store inventory on there and more. Shop.blueoxrunning.com, shop.blueoxrunning.com. So a little bit of a contrast, right?
Actually, contrast of what our personalities really are. Like I should be alone in the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, exactly. You typically want to be alone. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm annoying and loud and have a bigger personality and am just like that. But I actually really hold running to be a very personal thing. And I like to be alone on the trails. I like to train alone. I like to do workouts with people, but also alone. I'm kind of weird like that. So all that to say, 10 years ago for my 30th birthday, I did rim to rim to rim. I ran across the Grand Canyon and back. I made that a 50-mile day based on the trails that I did. And that was me just coming right out of like my marathon career. I kind of wasn't gaining any ground anymore in the marathon. I only PR'd by 1 minute in 6 years or 5 years or something like that. So I was a little restless, wanted to do something different. So I just had all this like marathon road fitness. And I kind of just got to my 30th birthday, and I definitely prepared. Like I ran a lot of 20-mile runs and prepared well through the winter, but I ran across the Grand Canyon and back on my 30th birthday and could kind of just do it, to be honest. And I read up on the routes and I read up on the training, and then kind of got into ultra running. But then fast forward 10 years later, I'm nice and injured my whole 39th year of life. And so once I kind of got back on board with some cross training and some running, this go at it was quite different, just with my confidence and my stage of life and my fitness. And I made the route be a little bit more direct, so 42 miles out and back. And the North Rim this year, for those of you that don't know, had record snowfall, so a lot of it was washed out, and they actually closed the whole trail 2 days after I was there because it was in such a place where they needed to repair it, and no visitors could go on it. So I barely snuck in a rim to rim to rim on my 40th in April this year. And it was, again, kind of a marker for me. It was a good experience. It was super hard. Climbing out the last 7 miles was really difficult for me. I was dehydrated and kind of bonking like crazy.
He called me the last, like wherever you get cell phone service.
Yeah, that's one thing that was different actually, is I got a little cell phone service out there when I checked in sometimes. So
and I could just tell from your voice alone that I've seen Adam in his lowest of lows running, and I was like, oh, I could like hear it even in your voice that like you were pretty depleted. Yeah. And so I remember, because it was kind of late at night, I waited until like you called me when you got back to the hotel and you were just going to crash. But because I just was like, oh, he's like driving, you had to drive somewhere to get back. And
I had to drive another hour, like where I stayed with a friend was an hour away from the trailhead. So I mean, I'm not going to be able to wrap that whole trip up in, 5 minutes here, but the things that were the same, that were just like the awe and the grandeur of the Grand Canyon. There's just like nothing like it. To get out there and to see it with your own eyes and to actually run into the Grand Canyon as the sun is coming up on the South Kaibab Trail is just something I will never, ever forget. It was amazing. And kind of getting by the mule train there. I feel like I got the full experience of being in the canyon. I actually did not feel good like the whole first half. I felt like my stomach was weird. I felt like I had too much salt or not enough. Like my salt and hydration balance was just off the whole day. But then I got into a good rhythm power hiking on the North Rim, and there was quite a bit of snow that slowed me down. And I think my climbing muscles, like my climbing mode, was on full blast on the North Rim because you're just fighting the snow. Once in a while, you're post-holing, like going up to your knees in snow. So all that to say, I think I wore myself out a little bit more on the climb on the North Rim than I normally would. And by the time I ran back down, I felt that's the best stretch I had, is actually running back down from the North Rim back to the river where I'm almost done. And the only thing I had left was the climb back out. And that was a bear. Like I already said, once I started just going back upwards, my body like rejected everything I had in it. It kind of like didn't have climbing mode in it. And I puked like 5 times, just a bunch of stomach acid and gels and everything I had in my stomach. And then I kind of knew I wasn't in trouble, like I wasn't like thinking I was going to have to call out like emergency, but I just knew there's no water in that last stretch. And because I took the most direct way out, which is actually the shortest trail out, but it's the steepest and there's no water. So that took me a lot longer than I thought it was going to. I still got in before sundown, but I was in a pretty rough place with cramping.
And when I talk to you, I always let our kids sleep in our beds when Adam is gone.
Yeah.
And Alice was still up, and you got to talk with her a little bit too, even though I don't know if you even remember that.
Yeah, it's not like I blacked out or anything. It's blurry, but so I feel like I don't need to like describe mile by mile, but that I'll just say that climb out of the Grand Canyon for me on my 40th birthday was very instrumental in me letting go of things going perfect and like thinking about time, because even as I was running, of course I like need to kind of know what time of day it was, and like if I'm smart in continuing the whole project, because I don't want to be there in the middle of the night or anything like that. But I still was kind of like comparing what my splits and what my time was to 10 years ago, right? And I knew I kind of I was halfway kind of at the same time actually, but then coming out, it was just taking a lot longer. And being able to let go of like what my final time was going to be And any kind of like performance comparison, any kind of like, am I doing this well? Like, what is even well when you're like bonking and both legs are cramping on the the rim of the Grand Canyon? Like, what does fast even mean? Like, those barriers and those categories just kind of vanished for me. And it was a really good thing for me to go through that low point, still be able to see the Grand Canyon at sunset and have awe and joy and pleasure in the middle of a really painful struggle. Like, that to me was that whole trip. That whole trip was worth it for me to reset a little bit of my mindset. And these are things I can talk about, and like, I've always wanted to be able to be less affected and less tied to my performance and times and personal records. But sometimes you just need to sometimes you just need to be broken and go through that and still experience the pleasure of running, even in a low spot. Like, I can't describe it very well, but for those of you that have been there, where you've had a terrible race or you've had a terrible workout, but you still know you are essentially kind of like doing what you should be doing with what's good for either your mindset or the goal for that day, that's what was really powerful. So anyway, yeah, then I got out of the Grand Canyon. I didn't have to use my headlight, which I was kind of proud of, because I actually gave my headlight to someone that was in a worse spot. I came across a guy a mile out, and the sun is down. Like, the sun is down, and I can only see a little bit of ambient light that's like coming up from dusk. And there's this guy in jeans and a polo shirt, and he's like not in a good place, like worse than me, which was saying a lot. And he's like leaning on this stick and kind of like hobbling up. And I'm like, dude, you need salt. You need, what can I help you with? Electrolytes, with cramping? Or I gave him the phone number. He was worried he was going to miss the last shuttle, which he was, and he did. And I gave him the phone number of the 24-hour taxi in the Grand Canyon. And then I gave him my headlamp. And once I gave him my headlamp, I was like, all right, it's game on. Like, I got to get out of this canyon, because once it's dark, it's dark. Like, you will not see your hand in front of your face. So I think my cell phone still had battery. I really could have used a flashlight if I needed to. All that to say, I got out before it got really dark, and I was thankful. And then I had to drive an hour, and that was a really hard thing too. So I actually pulled over and slept for 20 minutes on that drive, because I could not drive an hour without falling asleep. So I pulled over intentionally, fell asleep, and then got to where I needed to be. And 8 days later, I was cheering my head off with Kipchoge and Sarah Hall and Alicia Condit running the Boston Marathon. It was pretty killer. So that just goes to show you, like, running, activity, moving, hiking, like being outdoors, like there, I felt like I got the full range. I was alone, dehydrated, bonking in the Grand Canyon all by myself on a long trail run. And then 8 days later, I'm a spectator, having a blast with kids, with tens of thousands of people at like the biggest marathon in America. And it's just kind of all the same good vibes. Like, there's obviously differences there. It was so cool to see the contrast and the comparison within that whole week. I think that's an 8-day stretch that I'm still processing. You can tell I'm processing out loud as we speak, because I'm rambling and it's long, but there's a lot there. What else, Alicia? What's the best part about being 40?
Well, I was going to say one of my favorite parts of the trip, on a contrast, is we stayed right across the street from a 7-Eleven. And
in Boston, you're saying?
Yes,
that's right.
And like, the people there had the thickest Boston accents. Yeah. It was like, so I won't even try to impersonate. But that's where, instead of getting coffee, like making it in our hotel, or not our hotel, our Airbnb, I just would go down there in the morning, and we went down there together the morning of, and I just remembered that as being a super fun memory.
Well, I like those little touch points, because you realize this person working the gas station, this is their normal day. Like, they're not running the Boston Marathon.
Right.
This is nothing special for them. They're starting their normal day. They're super friendly. They know the runners are in town. And so you kind of get that local, normal, everyday grind feel before you go to this like world-class event. And then...
Well, and we weren't staying by other runners.
Right.
Like, I think it was a Lebanese neighborhood.
Yeah.
but that was one of like the coolest things about it, and that our kids got to experience like super safe, family friendly neighborhood, but all Lebanese. Like the grocery store we went into, we're like, I don't know what any of these things are to buy.
Yeah.
But so friendly, and like I said, it stood out to my kids. Like, yeah, this is a bigger city. We're outside of Little Eau Claire.
Yeah.
And that's what's so cool about a big city, to see the different pockets of different cultures.
We supported the local business. Like, we went to a pizza place that was like 5-block walk, and you can tell it's like 2 uncles and one of their kids, like, work, like, this is a family business, just like we sell shoes out here. That was their family business, and then we had to use public transit and get everywhere. We got talking about like the small business and the big businesses. We thought Legoland was going to be open. Of course it's not. They have all this renovation. So the small businesses came through for us big time in Boston. The big businesses were a little bit of a joke. Sorry. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to the podcast. This is Adam with Blue Ox Running asking a quick question. Have you ever wanted to up your game and level up your running? We're here for you with weekly group runs. We're here for you with individualized coaching, and now we're starting a race team. Each of these options are here to help you with your personal running, whether it's the free group runs or the weekly training group that we're starting called the Axe Pack, or an individualized coach that will help you get started with anything that you need. We've got options for experienced runners, non-experienced runners, slow runners, middle of the pack runners, fast runners, people looking at getting their first 5K, and people looking at running a marathon or beyond. It doesn't matter. All of our coaches and all of our staff are here to help you where you're at. Just go to blueoxrunning.com and click the training link at the top, and you'll see our different options to get you out on the road with others. All right, to wrap this up, what are you looking forward to most this coming year? Like, do you have any running goals? Like, what are you doing right now for your running other than getting your back adjusted?
Yes, I came back from Boston, turned 40, and I feel like
done.
I'm like elderly.
She's done. One and done.
Well, that's kind of what
kidding.
My mentality kind of always was, one and done, to be honest. I don't know. I just don't really have a desire to run more marathons, if I'm just being honest.
I love you so much.
I don't know what I honestly like feel cripple most days just getting out of bed. It's not running. It doesn't bother me when I'm running. I just I need to get my back figured out. And I always joke that I'm gonna my whole family is very lean. That's just like our build. And so I always joke I want to try to bulk up.
You're going to Ryan Hall it? You're going to retire from marathoning and just get all buff?
Yes, that's my goal. But no, in all serious, I'm signing up for a gym membership, hopefully by end of summer. And we were just talking about, as we get older with our kids, even you can't skimp on the little things of the fundamentals of running, like the stretching and the lifting and the core. Cause I don't do a lot of that stuff, honestly, except with group run in our race team. Those are the days I'm doing it. And I think I'm just all tight. And so no real goals. I aspire to hike something big, that appeals to me more. Like I said, there's just been such a shift of the racer's mentality. And if you're still into that, I don't want it to seem like I'm talking down to that. That's awesome and amazing. I sometimes wish I had more of a drive. But I don't know, as my kids get older, I want to see them experience their goals, and I don't know, just maybe take it a little slower.
Yeah, I mean, on the flip side, I'm all ready to rock and roll. I'm signed up for the Twin Cities 10 mile. I'm kind of motivated to run a little bit of the shorter distances, get back on the roads. I feel like I was on the trails and the longer stuff for so long that I'm kind of not sick of that, but ready to spice it up a little. And just with the training I can do, not have the pressure to always do the longest event of the weekend or have to do a 100-miler because I did one, a while ago. Or I'm super pumped to run the Twin Cities 10 mile and see how it goes. And maybe I'll run a half marathon in the fall. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll run a full marathon. Maybe I won't. I'm just super thankful that I'm back running more than I was last year at this time. And, like we said, none of us are professional athletes. The only pressure we have on ourselves is from ourselves, and there's just such a good range for you to kind of do what comes to you. If you like racing, rock and roll, do it. If you don't, like, be honest with yourself and try to maximize your joy. Like, that's kind of what I'm trying to do, is not maximize my PRs, because some of my PRs are long gone, but to maximize my joy is what I'm after at this stage. And if that includes trying to run fast again in this event, then so be it. But if it doesn't, and it means mountain biking 3 times a week and running twice a week, like, that might be where I'm at next fall. I don't know.
And part of opening the store, I think, looking back and like trying to maximize that joy is like, we've talked about this so much, but being in the community and like seeing other people like in our little herd compete and run and watch them chase their goals and see their highs and their lows. Like even at Dances with Dirt this weekend, it was like so fun to see Tyler. We've had Ode on I'm Missing People stuff.
Morgan Sweeney.
Yeah, like Tiffany. We saw
Steve
and like
Wood,
to cheer
Zach.
them on and see them like doing like, I mean, that's kind of like full circle to like get to see other people do what we love.
100%. That's probably the bow I'll put on this podcast and leave everyone with this. That is the biggest contrast. Even with the same event 10 years ago with Dances with Dirt, 10 years ago, I was getting ready to be hyper-focused on this first 50 miler. I'm super intense about like how good it's going to go. I had just gone out to Western States to experience and watch and pace that. I'm like full-blown into this thing. And I go to the Dances with Dirt, and I don't know anybody. I know my wife and the kid that's sleeping in a pack and play in a tent, and the other kid that's with us, and the grandparents that had to come help with childcare. Like, we're just there alone. And I still love that. I still love getting out and running that race and all that. But then fast forward 10 years, now I can go to the race, and even as I picked up my packet, I saw Steve Wood, I saw Zach Lee, I saw Ode sitting there, and like, oh, we just shot the breeze for 10 minutes as I picked up my packet. And then I woke up at my campsite and I saw the 50K and the 50-mile runners come by, and I picked out 3 or 4 people. They're giving me the Blue Ox horns. And then as I ran the half marathon, as we're lining up, I see Morgan Sweeney, I see Tiffany at the start line. Like, there's just so much more freedom and joy in kind of doing this all together. And everyone I just listed is running different events and is at different abilities, but that doesn't really matter. Like, we're all in the herd. And we're all at Dancing with Dirt, and we kind of see each other before and after the race. Saw Matt Mosel come in and finish. Saw Zach Lee win the 10K. And I saw, as we were driving down to the lake, we saw Tyler and Ode again run by.
I'm like, Adam, get back. He's like hanging out of our window.
I was standing on the car.
I was like,
as it was moving.
Cheer for them, but like get in the car, like it's moving.
Nope, the herd is barreling down the trail, and they need to be mooed at. All right. I think that's it. You have anything else? Okay. Check out the new podcast. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you know about the new podcast. Episode 19, we're going to wrap up here. But stay on the lookout, social media and our email list with a video that we're going to put out. Hopefully, I say this hopefully, if we find the time and all the craziness, by the end of the summer, Saucony and Nathan are being good to us with putting together kind of a little mini film about what we just talked about. Turning 40, getting out to Boston, getting out to the Grand Canyon, and moving and grooving.
And a little plug, we're always looking for cool stories, not just Adam and me. We wanted to recap on this, but feel free to reach out to us if you feel like you have a story you'd like to share.
BlueOx.run/podcast. BlueOx.run/podcast. There's a button on the right that says ask a question. So you can ask a question we can cover here, but you can also give us ideas for people in the area to highlight and have on as special guests. We've done that all the time. If you listen to the podcast, you know that. And with that, we are going to be out. You want to lead the charge on fast or slow? Let's go. You do the first part.
Fast or slow?
Let's go.
Fast or slow?
Let's go.
Fast or slow?
Let's go.
Let's go!